So we've talked about assessment this morning. We talked about how PBS plans are developed and how they should look. We've talked about a bunch of individual strategies, and we've talked about visual supports. But if we want to start to put all of this together, particularly if you're a family and you're either currently working with a behavior consultant or a behavior analyst, or you're about to embark on that, or now you're hoping to embark on that, what are some things that you should be thinking about? So the first thing has to do with this idea of a collaborative partnership, okay? So parents absolutely should be active participants in the entire process. So they should be actively engaged in that assessment process, because as parents living with your child day in and day out and experiencing the kinds of problems that you experience, you're the best person to be able to convey a lot of that information. So we want to make sure that parents are actively engaged in that. As well, parents should be actively engaged in the intervention process. That's going to help to ensure that the interventions we design are going to fit well with the family, okay? If you're working in a school, same deal, right? So teachers, SEAs should be active participants in both the assessment and intervention process. So if you're thinking, well, she's talking about parents, so this doesn't apply to me, or she's not thinking about me, I am thinking about you. Swap yourself out for parents, because it is essentially the same thing. If you're group home staff, you should be just as involved in that assessment and intervention process. What we want to do through that collaborative process and collaborative partnership is identify your needs and priorities, right? So if I'm the consultant working with you, I want to make sure I understand what your needs are and what your priorities are. Together, we should identify, and you want to make sure that your consultant understands critical information about your family culture and how your family runs, because how my family runs isn't likely going to be the same as the way your family runs. So we want to make sure that, you know, as behavior consultants or behavior analysts, that we've got a good understanding of that. If we're talking about a school, then I want to know about that classroom culture and about that school culture as well. We want families, school teams, group home staff, whoever we're working with, to really participate in helping us to better understand the problems and design solutions that are going to be appropriate, right? So this is something that we should be doing together. And then as we start to implement interventions, certainly we want you helping us to implement, because at the end of the day, it is going to be you who's left implementing, but also monitoring and letting us know if things are working or not working, right? Because if things are not working, I want to hear about that so that I can make adjustments to make it work. So all throughout this process, as consultants should be providing guidance and support in this process of understanding what the problem is, understanding the larger context, understanding what the goals and priorities are, coming up with potential interventions that are likely to be effective, and then making sure that they're likely to work from your perspective, that they're acceptable from your perspective, and that they're doable from your perspective. So consultants are going to bring to the table specific training and experience around the functional behavior assessment process, right? Like, I've studied how to do this. I've had supervision on how to do this. I've had a lot of practice on how to do this. So that's what I bring to the table. That certainly as parents or even classroom teachers aren't going to have necessarily the expertise in how to do a functional behavior assessment, because, you know, that's more clinical, right? As opposed to something that would usually happen in a family that the parents would know how to do. It's not complicated, but why would you know how to do that? Consultants should be providing guidance and support in that development of PBS plans, right? And so I come to the table again with an understanding of evidence-based interventions that are likely to be effective given the situation, given the child, given the family, given the context. And so I propose things and discuss them to ensure that what I'm proposing is acceptable, okay? And then part of my role too is to support families, support school teams, support whoever in implementing strategies. So again, you should never have somebody in terms of a professional just kind of come to you and say, here's your document, read it and do it, and I'm done. Because that's not going to be very helpful to you. It looks easy, And it's not super hard. I mean, most of the time, this is not rocket science, but you are learning new skills and you're learning to do new things in new ways. And you need support to be able to do that, right? You need some support. You need feedback. You need to know what you're doing right. If something isn't working, you need somebody to be able to show you how and model that for you so that you can try again. So to just have somebody say, okay, well, here's a list of things, you go do this and bye, that's not going to be very helpful for you. So your consultant should always be providing you with some direct support on implementation. And then finally, your consultant, whoever's working with you, should be helping you to monitor progress. So together, you're collecting some data, some information about how things are going, and looking to see, well, does the data tell us that things are getting better? And if things are getting better, great, continue doing what you're doing. But if we look at that data and the data suggests that things aren't getting better, or maybe they're getting worse, then something's wrong. And as the consultant, then it's my job to come in and look at the situation and go, okay, why? What's not working right here? Did I not provide enough support to the parents to help them learn how to implement these strategies? Or did I miss something in my assessment? Did I not understand something or realize that something is happening, right? Have I missed a piece? So it's my job to go back and try to figure out what's going wrong here so that we can adjust accordingly, okay? Because at the end of the day, you should be successful and your child should be successful. So it's really important, and this sort of sets us up for tomorrow a bit, because tomorrow we're going to be talking about ways in which parents can focus on teaching skills within the context of day-to-day life. So what we're not going to talk about tomorrow is how do you teach your kid algebra, but we are going to talk about how can you teach your kid a whole bunch of important skills without having to readjust your daily life. So that's where we're coming tomorrow. And the big message here is how important parents are. Okay, parents are the consistent person throughout a child's life, and you are the people who are there. And so we want you actively participating in your child's intervention, as opposed to people coming in and doing the intervention for you and going away, and you're left with the same situation. Okay, so we want to teach you how to implement strategies that make your life better and your child's life better. You as a parent, particularly if we're talking about families at home, you as a parent, you know your child best, you also know your family best, right? So you know what your family's needs are and you know how your family functions best. And so again, you want to make sure that the people working with you, the professionals working with you, understand your child's needs for sure, but also your family's needs. And that any interventions are designed in a way to really meet your family's needs. And they take into consideration the unique aspects of your family so that they work for your family rather than work against your family, okay? And finally, as parents, if you're hiring professionals to come in and provide this kind of support, you are the consumer, right? So like you would be a critical consumer with anything else, you're buying a car, you're looking for a mortgage, whatever it is you're doing, right? Be as critical a consumer around your professional services for your child as you would with anything else, okay? If you don't understand what professionals are doing, ask them. If you have a professional coming in using a whole bunch of jargon, we shouldn't be. But if we're doing that, say so. Tell us we're not making any sense and ask us to speak in plain language because we can. If something's not working, right? If we've implemented an intervention or asked you to implement an intervention and it isn't working, say so, right? Because we're not always there to see whether or not it's working. We don't live in your home all the time. So if something isn't right for you, let us know. And we should be, right? Any good professional is going to be open and receptive to that and make adjustments so that what we are proposing in terms of interventions are appropriate and acceptable for you, okay? Lots of times, and I mentioned this at the beginning of the day, part of the issue around problematic behavior in kids is that it isolates families. And right now, we're all really isolated. Everybody's feeling really isolated because of the pandemic. But think about how you're feeling. If you're not a family of a kid, if you're a school staff, if you're another professional, and you're at home feeling really isolated because of the pandemic right now, recognize that very often the families we support feel like this all the time, and worse. Oftentimes, families don't feel that they can go out into their communities and do the kinds of things that they want to do. They don't feel that they can go to a restaurant. They don't feel they can go to their neighborhood park. They don't feel that they can go to the mall. They can't go and enjoy a holiday activity. They can't do these things because their child engages in problematic behavior, and people in the public judge them for that, right? And that's a very real thing that happens. And so they stop doing the kinds of things that they want to do, and it starts to erode the family, right? It makes it really difficult. So you end up with situations where one parent always has to stay home with the child who engages in problem behavior, and the other parent takes kids out, or they have to send the kid to respite so that the family can do something, and that they can't do the kinds of things that they want to do as a family. And so that's a problem, right? That's a real issue that comes out of problematic behavior that probably is the biggest issue of all. It erodes family life. So we want to address that. And in the positive behavior support field, we have now decades of evidence to show that this approach can effectively address child problem behavior in family settings, in natural contexts, across a variety of routines, across a variety of ability levels. So kids who have pretty significant intellectual impairments to kids who don't have intellectual impairments. Implemented by parents, we have evidence to show parents with intellectual disabilities implementing these interventions with their children successfully. So this isn't something either that, well, only the most able, skilled kind of parent could do this. There are parents with intellectual disabilities raising children with intellectual disabilities, or raising typically developing children who engage in problem behavior, and they too are able to do this, and we have evidence to support that. Implemented not just by parents, but implemented by siblings, implemented by extended family members. So we have lots and lots of evidence to show that this approach is effective when done well and correctly, and with the needs of the family kind of at the forefront. There's also growing evidence, more and more evidence, because the importance of collaboration has come increasingly to our attention over the years. And so there's this growing body of research as well to demonstrate that improvements maintain long-term when there's this strong collaborative partnership between parents and professionals, when they're really working together to understand the issues that are at hand. Okay?